On this episode of the DTVC podcast, Mitch from the Video Vacuum is on, and we're going to be looking at the rare blue apes of Cannibal Isle. So there isn't much more I can say about that movie. It's a trip. So stay tuned. It was a really fun conversation with Mitch there, so stay tuned for that. And then in terms of upcoming episodes, we got some recording to do. So probably next week, you'll see what we got in store for you there for the month of August. So yeah, keep an eye on coming. We're already done with the month of July, if you can believe that. So yeah, so stay tuned. We'll have some, probably next week, you'll see what we got going for August coming as well. Also, DTVC Extra, nothing really planned for that either. Again, I'm the Ms. Marvel series away from having all the MCU Phase 4 movies watched. And so I thought about maybe doing that. I did a one-off for Thunderbolts, and I did, I thought about maybe doing something like that for Superman or Fantastic Four. But, I talked about, those on other podcasts. We'll be talking about that in a second. So, I don't really know if I need a DTVC Extra for those. So we'll see. We'll see what comes with those. Every time I say the DTVC Extra is done, the next thing you know, I'm popping up a new episode. So you never know how the spirit's going to move me on that. So we'll see what happens there. And then in terms of the YouTube channel, you may have noticed that we didn't have a video this past weekend. If you follow us on Facebook, you would have seen the video there. I did have to post it on Facebook. It was two fight scenes from King of the Kickboxers. The scene where Lauren Avedon fights Jerry Trimble, and then the scene where Lauren Avedon fights Billy Blanks, the end fight scene. It was completely blocked due to copyright. So I went through all the trouble to make it. It was about a 15-minute video, something like that. I put all that work into it, posted it, and as it was going through the checks, it said, yeah, this is blocked due to copyright, which doesn't make a lot of sense when you consider that there are 3 full versions of that movie up there. But anyway, for whatever reason, it was blocked due to copyright, so I was like, well, I don't want all this work to go to waste, so I put it on Facebook. So I guess for the future of that, pretty much everything I post for those YouTube videos where I'm kind of making fun of, but also extolling the virtues of various fight scenes and action sequences in movies. Most of them get clipped for copyright. I think probably one off the top of my head that didn't. Even the PM ones seem to. Strike Commando didn't, because the Severin people are really cool, right? They know what the score is. They're cool. They're not filing any copyright. They know what I'm doing there. But everybody else seems to be, they've got these. And I don't even know if they're putting up a copyright or if they're just filing it with whatever YouTube's AI is or something. I don't really know. But anyway, so I was trying to decide what I want to do, because the Seagal video is still doing pretty well. So I was like, I don't want to abandon it altogether. So I've just got to regroup a little bit, think of something else to do there. But again, my most recent YouTube video isn't on YouTube. It's on my Facebook. It's on our Facebook page, the DTVC Facebook page. So I think it's Facebook. .com/direct-to-video connoisseur. You should see us on there. You should know us on there. But yeah, if you're not on our Facebook page, definitely check it out. I think the Blue Sky, I did link to it on Blue Sky as well. But yeah, you should like and follow on Facebook. So you get that. I usually post updates on there. So Facebook, Blue Sky, more so than Instagram. I'm trying to keep up with Instagram as well, but Facebook and Blue Sky, you're more likely to get updates, so you can see the video there. But yeah, we'll see. One idea I had was going back to Seagal, maybe doing the forwarder, right, where he's in the train station where he tricks the guy into opening up a package that explodes or whatever. Maybe that could be a fun one to do. But anyway, we'll see what happens. In terms of the site, we just posted what was the movie we did this past week? Armor, Sylvester Stallone Randall scandal. So kind of fun to do one of those again. This weekend we're going to probably do Bedroom Eyes 2, Wings Hauser movie, one that we covered on the podcast with John from After Movie Diner and Miscellaneous Plumbing Fixtures, and PM Entertainment Pod, of course. That's the big one, PM Entertainment Pod. You'll be checking that out. But I think we did that, when did we do that? Early this year, I think. So the Bedroom Eyes 2, it was a trip. I got it off of some streamer, it was a pay streamer that supposedly had all kinds of cult movies. I think it's called Cult Picks or something like that. Don't quote me on it, because there's another one that's a similar name that's Fugazi. So, and this was pretty Fugazi as it was. They had taped it. The version that they had was taped off of when Joe Bob Briggs had his show on the movie channel. Whatever channel that was on. So it had the opening with Joe Bob Briggs. I'll talk about it on the review. So anyway, look for that. Bedroom Eyes 2. Get some more Wings Hauser, some more erotic thrillers on the site. So check that out this weekend. And then in terms of other podcasts, This past weekend, I was on the Lambcast. We talked about the Fantastic Four movie with so it was the host Richard Kirkham and then Jeanette Ward, who's been on our podcast before. We talked about the new Fantastic Four movie. So another reason why we're not going to get a DTVC extra because we discussed it pretty well, and there wasn't usually Richard has like a more full panel, and so it was just the three of us. We just kind of went for it. So I think it's episode 778, and I would say. Also, check out episode 777 before that, because also, in addition to Richard and Jeanette, who was on that one as well, Todd Liebenow from Forgotten Filmcast, he was on, who's also, he's been on our podcast as well. They were on there. They had a really fantastic conversation about Superman. So check out 777, but also 778 of the Lambcast. I'm on that as well. It's Lamb, the way you would think is, LAMB cast. You should be subscribed to that. It's a really, really fun podcast there, so check that out. And then Exploding Helicopter podcast coming up on the 1st, August 1st. We talked about the Bigfoot movie, The Asylum Bigfoot, which I reviewed on the site. Funny thing about that was I reviewed it on the site back before I really cared about those presidential portraits. So I had missed that the Obama presidential portrait is that. So we now officially have Obama. So we've got every president from Reagan through Obama. We've got presidential portraits of them. So so we'll definitely check that out. Chris Kavinsky, he's found some Nixons, and I think he even found an LBJ. In some older movies, so they're out there. All these presidents are out there somewhere. So, it was really fun conversation. I was also I kind of did my part as the American representative on the Exploding Helicopter podcast to discuss the differences between the Brady Bunch and the Partridge Family and why those two shows are linked. What brings those together? Because of course in Bigfoot you've got Danny Bonaducci versus Barry Williams. So really fun one. So check that one out. That is this what is it? Friday is the first. So check that out. August 1st episode of Exploding Helicopter Podcast. I'm on there. Really fun one there as well. Wow, we're 7 minutes in. I think I covered everything. I think we got to everything on here. So, we'll have John Cross from After We Dinner play in our theme song here. Also, my newest novel, Nadia and Aiden. Pick that up. The link is in the podcast description, or the link to my author's page is in the podcast description. You can pick up another book if you don't like. If Nadia and Aiden doesn't sound like your taste, check out something else. The thing about Nadia and Aiden that's great though is it's a quick and easy read. It's a smaller book compared to some of my other ones. So definitely check that out. But once John plays in our theme song here, when we come back, Mitch from the Video Vacuum will be on, and we will be talking about the rare blue apes of Cannibal Isle. To the DTVC the DTVC podcast. I was going to say DTVC Connoisseur podcast, but that's what the C stands for, is connoisseur. But anyway, I'm joined once again by a guest who's been on plenty of times here. Everybody should know him at this point, Mitch from the Video Vacuum. Welcome back, Mitch.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
Yeah, and as we were talking about, last time you were on, we did Space Mutiny, and so we we're kind of talking about like just sort of what kind of movies. What could we possibly do for this next time that you were on? And, because you've been on quite a bit, so we've covered a lot of different things. I mean, we've done, Seagal, we've done Dolph a few times, we've done Sedaris. We've kind of run the gamut, wave films, all kinds of different things. And you brought up one that it looked fantastic, but then actually watching it was just like another level. It's the rare blue apes of Cannibal Isle.
Yeah, this one, we're both kind of fans of, MST and just, kind of just really wild, weird, bad movies in general. And I had discovered this one a little while back, and I've kind of been itching it to kind of expose other people to it. And I don't know if I'm patient 0 and you're patient 1, but it's WTF kind of movies where I definitely think it deserves a big cult following.
Yes. Well, and it's funny because I was saying, a couple of weeks ago, I saw Superman in the theater, and that was like this movie that I thought, okay, I can't wait to talk about that movie. And I had Freddie Young from Full Moon Reviews when we talked about it, the opening segment of that podcast. And I was like, I couldn't imagine another movie that I would be that excited to talk to anybody about. But it's like when I watched this, because when you first told me about it, and I looked it up online, and I saw pictures of the blue apes and all of that, I was like, okay, this looks like a lot of fun. But when you actually watch it, it's like, to your point, like you need to have somebody to discuss this movie with, because it's almost like part of it is like, did somebody else see this? But also it's just like, there's so many fantastic elements of this film that just make it so much fun.
Yeah, kind of bizarre kids movies are kind of like their own subgenre.
Right.
And I think this is like kind of next level stuff. This is a very kind of almost hallucinatory experience where you have to kind of pinch yourself, like, did I just get dosed with something? Because there are just so many. I mean, it's like an onion of just bizarre elements kind of wrapped within the element beyond element. And then like the more you dig into it, the more you're more perplexed than when you even started, because it just gets weirder and wilder as it goes along.
Well, one of the things that really fascinated me about it too is that it's shot in Malaysia. It's sort of like Malaysian production, but yet all the voice actors are British. I think the writers of the film are also British, except for the director, Don Greer, who was like kind of one of the early porn directors in America, right? He was doing stuff in like the 60s. And I mean, he was born in 24. He's still alive. He's still with us as far as I know. I think he's 100. He's going to be 101 this fall. So we've got an early porn director. He also did scare films. Like he did like a movie about, the ills of tripping on acid. So it's like you've got that kind of pedigree. I mean, just kind of amazing to think about. Like if someone, I'm trying to think of a porn director, like I don't know, Gary Graver or somebody like that, like making a kids movie. And is this what you'd get if they did that?
Yeah, that's a fascinating element unto itself. I mean, and Don Greer, the director, he did like a lot of stuff that would be, very something weird. Like I think something weird released a lot of his movies, and one of his porn films that I've seen that I actually like was Shot on Location, which is kind of like a spoof of what it takes to make a porn movie and stuff. And it's got Renee Bond in it. It's actually pretty well done, but nothing in his filmography really kind of prepares you for the Rare Blue Apes Cannibal Isle. And it's I mean, the only really thing I can like link it to is like Ron Orman going from making things like Monster and the Stripper into having like a near-death religious experience, and then all of a sudden devoting the rest of his career to making religious movies like If Footmen Tire You, What Will Horses Do? So you have like this kind of just like abrupt, and this was his last movie, but it's just like, there's no like kind of middle ground. It just went from adults only to kids weird movie. So it's just like this fascinating schism.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. Like you said, it's his last movie. So it's like he does this and then he's just like, I'm done. I'm not doing anything else. And to your point, like, yeah, like Shot on Location, that's kind of a big one. I mean, it's utterly fascinating that this is the movie that he would do. And I mean, also it's like whenever you go on IMDb and all you see are gray circles with silhouettes in them. And granted, you and I are used to doing movies that have a lot of gray circles with silhouettes, but when it's all that, right? When there isn't a single person that you recognize in there, it's a trip. I mean, the cinematographer, Archambault, which again, these are like MST3K names too, right? Like these are, if when they're doing the opening credits, and I mean, even I'm like going all over the place here with this movie, but even the opening credits gives us two different copyright dates, right? I think it gives us 73 and 75. I think 75 is really the one. But Yeah, Archambault. I mean, he was doing biker films. You know, he does Angels Die Hard. He's a cinematographer on that.
Yeah.
He does the Rare Blue Apes of Cannibal Isle, and then he's done as well. And I guess I don't know which way you go with that, right? That if the director and cinematographer, this is the last movie they ever make, is it that they are so put off by the process of making movies that they never want to make anything again, or they look at it as like, I can never make anything this good again. I've done it. I'm just gonna throw on that sombrero and waltz off into the sunset.
Yeah, it's like, was it a resume killer or was it just the cherry on top of a long distinguished career? We don't know, but I think anyone that's seen this movie can say. I mean, where do you go from Rare Blue Apes? I don't know. You pretty much said everything you need to say after you've made this film.
And you know, the other point that you made when you were talking about the movie, or when you reviewed the movie on your site, I should say, when you reviewed on the Video Vacuum, you mentioned this kind of the danger involved, and I mean that's another piece. You know, we watch a lot of these movies where, you know, you watch like an AIP action movie, and you see explosions going on around actors, and it's just like, I wonder how safe that is. You know, or you know, Amir Shervan film like Samurai Cop or something like that, or you know, Young Rebels, where people are swimming in like work boots and the work boots are filling up with water and they're literally drowning in the film. But in this movie, it's like you've got these people in these big animal mascot costume type things, like that are like falling in water. They're falling off of cliffs and you know, off from big heights, and they're rolling around and stuff like that. It's like, man, I don't know how safe any of that is.
Yeah, it's definitely an element of danger that you are in constant fear for the actors' lives, almost the whole movie, and it's almost like an amalgam of a Jackie Chan movie and an episode of Jackass. It's like you have like you said, the visibility in these costumes was probably non-existent, and you have them going over waterfalls, swinging from vines, and like, you know, it looks like they used every bit of footage. There's one scene where these two guys in these giant crocodile masks are like walking on this tiny footbridge. It's almost like the Indiana Jones Temple of Doom bridge, but without railings. And it's like every step they take, you're like shielding your eyes to just out of safety for the actors, which uh yeah, I don't even think Tom Cruise would have done some of this stuff.
Right. Right. Well, because that's the thing, right? Like you mentioned, like everybody talks about Tom Cruise as like this, you know, he's this like thing, right? He's like this machine that's like just, you know, Mr. Big Stunt Guy. And it's like, yeah, again, for the stuff that we've been watching, and again, you know, you think of like PM Entertainment movies where you're just like you're seeing stunts go wrong and they keep the take. You know, I was doing a Riot last Christmas season with Todd from Forgotten Filmcast, and he pointed out when Gary Daniels kicks over a flaming barrel that's like out in the street, because it's, you know, the whole riot's happening in LA in the movie. The barrel rolls in his path. And he says, it's just like a flaming barrel, like rolling in his direction, you know, or like, was it Recoil, where the car flips up in the air and hits a light post or something like that. It's like, you know, all that kind of stuff was happening. But this movie is like another level where it's just like, I mean, was Don Greer just telling people like, hey, you in that crocodile suit, just jump down this ledge here and fall in the water. And I mean, I can't imagine those suits were great at repelling water, right? They weren't. They were certainly absorbing water, I think.
Yeah, and then on the flip side of the element chart, there's the scene where the apes have these flaming coconut catapults, and you see every blessed detail of them like pouring hot oil in the coconut and lighting it, and then when it finally comes time to cut the rope so the catapult fires the flaming coconut, it does not work, and it goes like almost like right into like the you know, right at the camera. And it's like one of those things where you visibly like kind of almost instinctively cover your eyes because it's like, oh my god, this is going to get horribly wrong. But they keep it in and they just keep going, and then the next catapult kind of works and the second one works a little bit better. But it's just like, or was it just like rigging that whole coconut system? Did that go, you know, it just took too long? But it just adds to that element of just like peril.
Right, exactly. Well, why don't I do a quick synopsis here? I'm going to do the best I can with a synopsis. And I,
Yeah.
and I also I don't see this as a movie that we can necessarily like kind of just go, oh, here, this is what happens here and here, because it's so all over the place. But essentially, you have this kid Nani who's mute. He lives on this rich estate, which I guess is supposed to be in Malaysia, with his dad who's like this older Dutch guy, and then his mom who's local Malaysian. He's got two siblings. He's got a sister and a brother who are both older. And the thing with Nani is Nani has a duck named Mr. Quack Quack. And Mr. Quack Quack is a bit of a troublemaker. And so the dad says, hey, tomorrow morning you're getting rid of the duck. And so Nani says, well, if I get a choice between getting rid of the duck or getting out of here myself, I'm getting out of here. And the funny thing is that Nani actually has his own mode of transportation because he's got a boat that he takes out fishing all the time. So he's got this little dinghy. And so he takes the dinghy to get away from his family and take Mr. Quack Quack with him. And he ends up on this island called Cannibal Isle. And the first thing he encounters is a blue ape in a cage and a bunch of guys who are like in these crocodile outfits. Like the blue apes look, I think, more like Sid and Marty Krofft, whereas like the crocodiles are like something out of like a Chuck E. Cheese kind of thing. I don't know what you think.
The only way I can really describe this movie, it's like Werner Herzog's Garbage Pail Kids movie, because that's what you're in, like the most like desolate jungle hell imaginable with these guys in these clunky costumes. Like you said, it's like Chuck E. Cheese. Like half of it is maybe poorly done Chuck E. Cheese, and then the other is like moderately acceptable college football mascot uniform. So it's just like anyone listening, there's going to be, when we're discussing this movie, we're just going to be probably talking in ellipses the whole time, because we're just going to like sentences will just like end because we have no idea what to how the.
One thing I meant to do actually before we did the episode was these crocodiles. They reminded me of there's a casino in Vegas. It's kind of off the strip. So to give you a sense, when I went to Vegas in 2013 to visit my friend, who he used to play, he and his partner, they used to play poker for a living, and so he kind of had Vegas wired to a degree, in the sense that like he knew how to get around by using different shuttles that would take you between different casinos, and then he could kind of use those shuttles to get out to like grocery stores and things like that. And there was this casino off the strip that he would use, and if I remember correctly, there was a sign when you went into the casino. There's a big sign that would say, oh, you can cash your social security check here. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, or your welfare check or anything like that. So that's the kind of casino this was. And I believe I think it was this one, or you had to get a shuttle from another one to this one. So maybe it was the other one that had this crocodile band. Like a sculpture, like statue of like these like little cartoon crocodiles playing in a band when you walked inside, and they look just like those crocodiles. The other funny thing about that is like there's kind of this big nature, like animatronic nature thing that they had there, and they had a bear that looked like Nick Nolte's mugshot. It was like, I'll have to get you some pictures and show you. I meant to show you before because that's what the crocodiles reminded me of.
Yeah, it almost. They have like almost like this Keith Richards kind of vibe, because they got like the ratty kind of like ponytail here and there. They have and then they're called swampies, or they refer to themselves as swampies, and they talk with this like thick pirate brogue, and there's it's just like one of those kind of like. In this, just talking about these crocodile pirate characters, this is probably like the 7th or 8th weirdest thing going on in the movie.
Exactly. Well, and then so the other thing is that with the blue ape who's in the cage, so Nani gets captured by these crocodiles. Mr. Quack Quack escapes, fortunately. So Mr. Quack Quack is running around, but Nani is captured. And he's put in this bamboo cage with this blue ape, and the blue ape tells his story that essentially however many generations ago like pirates and shippers would use the island to move things around, and they had captured a blue ape, and somehow that blue ape ended up being in the home of a Victorian gentleman of some sort, and the Victorian gentleman essentially taught him the ways of high Victorian society, and so this blue ape, who's now cultured in high Victorian society, comes back to Cannibal Island, essentially raises all of them like that. And so I guess because he grew up in high Victorian society and speaks a nicer brand of English, Nani can understand him. The other thing is Nani is suddenly not mute. In his confrontation with the crocodile, he's scared into speaking. He starts speaking all the time. But the crocodiles can't understand them. The crocodiles have no clue what they're saying. Even though everybody's speaking English, the crocodiles can't understand Nani. So who knows what that is? But just before they're about to get put into a stew, Mr. Quack Quack rescues them. And then for some reason, when Mr. Quack Quack rescues them and they escape, they've got to go on this big long trek across the island through all these really weird adventures. Like, so they're taking the boat, they get near a waterfall, and we think Mr. Quack Quack has sacrificed himself, which I'm telling you, that the blue ape guy doesn't seem to think that's such a big deal. That Mr. Quack Quack, even though Nani ran away from home to protect Mr. Quack Quack, so now that Mr. Quack Quack has given his life to save the boy, suddenly it's not such a big deal. But fortunately, Quack Quack comes back. And then they go climbing these mountains. They find an old pirate who's scaring away the crocodiles. And there's also roses that spit out what's called rose gas, which I guess hurts the crocodiles or something. Who knows? And like you said, the whole thing ends in this big pitched battle with the blue apes not being able to shoot catapults correctly until they finally figure it out. But all the misses are just like these flaming balls landing on the ground near everybody. Unfortunately, they win. There's a big song at the end. Everybody lives happily ever after. And then Nani takes Mr. Quack Quack home. And fortunately, because his parents actually were worried about him, they're like, fine, you can keep Mr. Quack Quack, and everybody lives happily ever after.
And that's just the highlights, folks. Right. There's non sequiturs and pointless side tracks and songs. We didn't even mention it's a musical. It's there, and the songs are great. They're actually toe tappers, and they'll get stuck in your head, you, me, and you sing it because that rhythm and that cadence just gets locked in your head. And it's unlike anything I've ever seen before. And I've seen it multiple times, and I'm like I said, it's one of these movies that I'm just trying to get the word out about, because I think I think this is a cult movie in the making for the 21st century.
Well, because to your point, just thinking about some of the movies that we've discussed on here. Obviously, when we did the Wave film documentary, the Wave movie that we talked about was Eaten Alive: A Tasteful Revenge, where Debbie D, star of the Wave films, was I can't think of the name of the Tina Kraus, was shrinking Tina Kraus and other actors of the Wave films, shrinking them down with a ray and then eating them. So the fact that we could top that for crazy, because this definitely tops that, which you would I never you wouldn't think that, but this is beyond that even.
Yeah, and it's just it's and we were saying before, just trying how does one get this all on film? You take a veteran porn director and you go to the most desolate parts of Malaysia, and you get these wonderfully deranged looking costumes, and then you get a bunch of local, mostly it seems like they're local actors, and then you just dub them over anyway, and then you just I don't even know, like you said, that it's almost like, I think when you said Sid and Marty Krofft, I think that might have been the germ that started it, because it does kind of had that kind of feel like a HR Puffin Stuff Boogaloos kind of thing, where they start kind of real world, then they wind up in this magical, kind of different atmosphere. But it's like that kind of idea filtered from a porn director's point of view. And like I said, this Werner Herzog, Fitzcarraldo, and Aguirre, kind of like that, the whole thing, when you're like, oh my God, how did they even film this? How did they even get this on film, let alone have people in these ridiculous animal costumes?
Well,
Yeah, it's just one of a kind.
and I mean, also to the Werner Herzog point, I mean, you know, think about like a Fitzcarraldo or something like that. It's like, you know, Herzog loved the idea of nature being dangerous. You know, he just like loved that idea of like animals killing each other, of plants killing animals to protect them, all of that kind of stuff. And this is almost like, you're right. This is almost like if Werner Herzog was hired by Sid and Marty Krofft to direct a movie for them, and on some levels this is what you'd get, but then you swap out Werner Herzog for, you know, Don Green as 60s porn director, and you get something even zanier than that.
Yeah, and it's like they're way up high in the tree. They're up in the tree when they're barreling down the river on, like, you know, a raft made of twigs and twine. That they're really doing. There is no faking this. They had to actually go out and do it, and that's probably why they couldn't get a SAG approved cast, because nobody would allow them to do it.
I mean, and to your point about this, I mean, there are very few close-up shots that would make you think that like they are in like some, like maybe like a pool or something on a set and filming it that way. That they're in the Malaysian jungle, and I mean, there are a lot of these wide-angle shots that shows them. I mean, I have to hope that they didn't fall down the waterfall. I'm hoping they threw like big stuffed versions of these crocodiles down the waterfall. But like, you know, there's a sequence where there's like a rope swing, and so, you know, they're using the rope swing, and you know, first off, there also probably wasn't any ASPCA or anybody else monitoring the duck usage in the film, because the duck is getting manhandled the entire time. Nani's just carrying the poor duck around. Then they throw the duck off of a cliff, kind of, you know, not a high cliff, but probably something like about 10 feet up, and the duck kind of flies its way down with its clipped wings and makes its way to the ground pretty safely. But they just, that's just how they do it. And then the crocodiles have to chase after them, and so the first one tries to use the rope swing and just like falls right into this like kind of this shallow mud watery kind of thing, and then the other one tries to climb down this ledge thing and just falls completely. That they're definitely not using dummies or animatronic or anything like that. Those are people in suits that are you know, getting like skin knees, like risking sprains and broken bones, probably getting sprains. I wouldn't be surprised to find out if we have broken bones here too. But also like the drowning was a real concern, because these things are filling up with water, and yeah, they're just like, hey, yeah, just go in the water. I mean, these are rushing rivers that they're shooting from. And again, these are all wide angle shots. So they're not trying to hide anything, or they're not trying to like make anything. There's no cinematic magic going on here.
No, there's no sets. There's no safety nets. There's no very little disregard for the actors. I think it was, you know, a miracle. That, you know, it's a miracle that it exists, but I mean, on several levels. I mean, it's just a miracle nobody got killed, and if they did, will we know about it? I don't, probably not.
I mean, so the one thing is that Vinegar Syndrome has released this. It was like their lost film series, I think they called it, and so you would hope that if Vinegar Syndrome released it, maybe they looked into it a bit. But yeah, how would you even know? How would you even know? I mean, what are you going to do? Like run background checks on everybody listed in the cast to see if they survived it? And then the other thing too is that like the listings are a little bit off, because the actors that voice them are all like English or UK actors, and so they're different from the people who are actually in those suits, like, you know, writhing around in the muck and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, they might have just been like, you know, just locals. They just need somebody a certain height to fit into the costume. Say, hey, do you want to make a quick $10 or something? And they just shove them into the costume and say, okay, get up on this high scaffolding and walk.
Yes. Right. Well, because to your point too about the scaffolding thing, I mean, again, it's like they found this sort of like, I don't, like abandoned like fishing pier kind of area, and So part of that, you know, when Nani lands, he's like lands in amongst all these piers and pillars and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of know what that kind of thing's like, because in Maine, you know, you see that. I'm sure probably in Maryland you see that too, where it's like areas that used to maybe have a fishing pier, but nobody's really doing that kind of commercial fishing anymore. So it kind of just goes to waste and it falls apart. And generally, as you know, like maybe as a kid, you know, you maybe venture out there and you know, you got lucky because nothing happened, or if it did, you just fell in some shallow water and you're okay. But it's not really the kind of place, you know, it seems like the kind of place that teenagers might make a movie for, like a school project or something, but not like adults, like making something that's going to be like wide release.
Yeah, and there's like the subplot where they have to get the smog, the smug, or it's like this like gruel that the swampies like, and there's like the like this the entrance to it to get in down into the mines. It's like you said, it's just like this dilapidated, uh, just like setup, and like you said, it would they probably just found these locations because I don't think anybody could have ever just built them. I think they're all just using this, you know, just abandoned, uh, just like, yeah. It's so that right there tells you none of this is safe, and you know when you know. I mean, we're supposed to, you know, we're supposed to fear the swampies. We're supposed to think that they're the bad guys, but you know, 8 times out of 10, they're the ones that look like they're in the most peril.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, they kind of. It's funny because, you know, it starts off with them being the one. You know, I mean, they're kind of like prodding and I don't want to say torturing. They're prodding this poor blue ape who's in the bamboo cage, and then Nani ends up stuck there too. And you know, the thing is that they're going to be put in this stew, right? They're having this big stew, this big celebration that the big captain, you know, of the bad crocodiles. You know, the leader of them is these pirates. He wants to enjoy this stew, and fortunately, Mr. Quack Quack rescues them, and they escape. And then, like, it's like they're supposed to be on the run from the crocodiles, but you're right. It's like they're on the run from the crocodiles, but it seems like every time they encounter the crocodiles are the ones who end up, you know, the much worse for wear, whenever these confrontations happen.
Yeah, and there's you have scenes like they're chasing them through the desert. And there's so many like kind of like these like non sequitur scenes where like they find like a water pump in the middle of the desert that you're like almost convinced that this whole thing is going to be a dream at the end, because it just has that feeling of just it's very episodic. It's very you know, there are songs, there's weird blue transitions, like you know, dissolves from scene to scene. It's almost like, you know, psychedelic looking, and you're just kind of convinced that like this is going to be one of those things where the kid wakes up and Mr. Quack Quack's in his bed but no, this actually happens. I mean not really a spoiler, but yeah, it just has that feeling that whole time where like this has got to be a kid's dream, and it's real.
Right. Oh yeah, like he just gets on a boat and goes home. Like that's the end of it.
Yeah.
And I mean, they have this big celebration. So the other thing too is, and maybe this is I don't. Well, I should be saying spoil. I you know I people should be going to see this no matter what, even if we spoil this for you. But we have to kind of talk about all, you know, there. So you know, eventually the crocodiles kind of all get together and they siege the area where the blue apes are living, and there aren't that many of them. There's like 5 blue apes, right? Like we think there's like this whole community of blue apes that equals the number of crocodiles, but there really doesn't. There's only like 5 of them, and like you said, they're trying to launch these, like, you know, the grandfather and this other guy. They're trying to launch these coconut bombs and other like catapults. And oh, that's right, I forgot. The grandpa created a nuclear bomb as well. I think he had a nuclear missile.
Yes.
Yes, he creates a nuclear missile, and it blows. It doesn't blow up, but it kind of falls apart and falls over. And he makes some comment, which I think is supposed to be a message about nuclear weapons at that time, right? Is that, you know, this wasn't meant for humans to have anyway, so it's probably for the best that it
Yes.
didn't work. So, and of course, like the young blue ape that's leading Nani to his home, he's like, "Oh, Grandpa has this really great missile he's going to use. He's going to blow up all the crocodiles. It's going to be great, you know." And I mean, can you imagine if that's how the movie ended? Like what was that? Was that the show Sledgehammer that had like a nuclear bomb go off or atomic bomb go off
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like all of a sudden it's just like just shows the big explosion. I mean, can you imagine these had like file footage of a nuclear? Because I mean, they'd had file footage of animals, right? They had file footage of like snakes and reptiles and things like that when they were walking through the jungle. Just like file footage of an atomic bomb going off, and that's the movie. And then they're like just singing and dancing back at the Blue Apes house, and Nani goes home on his boat. That would have been amazing. What we get is even crazier because the crocodile has his own like grenade or something, the head crocodile, but for some reason instead of throwing it blows up on him, and he blows up his whole ship and blows him up too. And that's kind of it.
Yeah, and to go back to the point with the nuclear missile and everything, the grandpa's name is Oompa,
Right.
so he could be Oompa Heimer. I don't know. Never mind. That was terrible. But yeah, I mean, there's like it's like this and Superman 4 is where I think that you needed that nuclear message inside of a kids movie to plant that anti-nukes message.
Right, exactly. Well, because there's also like an environmentalist message in this, talking about like taking care of your planet and all of those kinds of things. And again, I don't know that there's anything that happens in this movie that is anti-environmentalist. Like, I think if the crocodiles had somehow gotten this schmug mine of whatever it was, and they were like destroying the island, or if like the message was we can't let them get the schmug mine because they'll destroy the island or whatever, that would have made some sense. But there's really nothing in there. I mean, I guess they kind of keep the island hidden from humans because they're afraid that they'll I don't know, but it's like just sort of tagged on at the end, like, hey, protect the planet or something like that.
Yeah, they even say, like, instead of God save the Queen, they say God save the Green.
That's right.
That's like their rallying battle cry too. So it is this environmentalist message, but it seems like it's there because that's what a kids movie would have. They just didn't really have it's like a kids, like you would think a kids movie would have an environmentalist message. That just they didn't know how to work that in there. So it just becomes just like another kind of footnote in the whole kind of bizarreness of the movie.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's such a trip. Now we got to get into the apes themselves, the blue apes, because of course for the most part we're seeing the young one, right, the son, most of the time, and the way they do the ape. So there are periods of time where somebody's in the suit walking around, but like early on when they're in the cage, I think it's really just that it's like an animatronic ape that's just sitting there and the mouth is moving, and that's it. I don't think it's like, because it doesn't really move at all. It just sits in a corner and talks that way.
Yeah, and it's really rudimentary. You can almost see like the kind of inner workings of it, like moving the lips up and down, and it's almost jarring because it just comes out of nowhere. It has like this like refined British voice, and he like just does like an exposition dump like right away. There's no, oh hi, how are you? And it just like tells you, and it goes into this flashback of the apes and everything, and you're already just trying to like get up to speed with these talking crocodile pirates, and then they throw the blue ape and his whole family history at you, and it's just like one of those iconic scenes of just kind of head scratching lunacy.
Right. I was trying to remember the Stanley Steamer was the car that he was driving, and which of course here in America we know Stanley Steamer as a company that steams rugs, that steam cleans rugs. But I guess it was like an old car in England, I guess. So there's a point right where the blue ape is riding with this Victorian guy who I guess owns him or has it or whatever, and he has to get out and like fix the car, like do the cranking and all of that stuff. But eventually at some point the guy lets him go, and he goes back to Blue Island, raises his whole family as these sophisticated blue apes living in a Victorian style, which is funny in and of itself. This idea that Victorian England is somehow like the aspirational culture that these blue apes should be living for.
Yeah, I mean, and it's one of the, again, it's not really even really touched upon other than like, oh, here's these apes in this Victorian setting having tea and stuff. It's just like, for a lot of movies, that would be the whole movie, that the whole thing that they would base the movie around. Whereas this is just another breadcrumb of like, oh well, here's some more of weirdness for you folks.
Right, exactly. I mean, yeah, and it's I think it's the other thing too. It's interesting. I'd be curious to know, like, so the movie's listed as PG, and I think the the original intention of the movie would have been G, right? It would have been general audience. They would have wanted it for kids. But I think it is just so out there and so creepy that like 10 to 12 is probably the youngest maybe you want to go with something like this, right? I don't know what your thoughts are.
Well, I first like kind of heard of this movie, Temple of Schlock, the website. They do like kind of like a, a feature where uh, they'll find like an old drive-in ad or something, and it's always like the third or fourth movie uh, of a Dust from Dusk Till Dawn marathon, and it'll be some just random title, and it's usually just a retitling of an old movie. And there was one ad, and it was like The Adventures of Mr. Quack Quack, and which is one of the alternate titles for Rare Blue Apes. And because you just don't forget that name, Mr. Quack Quack. And I remember like reading that, I was like, oh, that's weird. And then I remember going back, kind of searching through that website again, not too long after that. And then there had been this whole kind of in the comment section, people, I think it was Australia, who were like, oh my God, I've seen this movie. We had cable when we were kids, and the cable station films the show, but they had this. And like, if you were a kid and you were stuck watching this show or this movie, like you knew it. And like, then later you would try to tell people, hey, do you remember this movie? And they would look at you like, what are you talking about? So it was like, oh, okay. So it played at least here and there, some places. And, you know, so I just remember that. And then I remember hearing Vinegar Syndrome had put this out. I was like, oh my God, is that the Mr. Quack Quack movie? And I like went back and was like, yes. So finally, and you know, it did not disappoint after all these years of, you know, trying to find it.
Well, and it would be, you know, you think about here in America, you know, I don't know what you would, like in the early 80s, you know, in early to mid 80s, a lot of stuff a lot of this kooky stuff from the 70s would get sort of they would air it like early in the morning. So like things like Sigmund the Sea Monster, for example, would be on at like 6 in the morning before like the regular normal, you know, the cartoons that like the more modern cartoons. But like on weekends, stuff like this they would use to like fill a lot of time. But I don't remember this one exactly. I wonder if this was one that I don't know if maybe because everybody had English accents. I don't know. I'd be curious to know if people out there if this was something that aired here in America early in the morning in the early 80s, like some of that other stuff did.
Yeah, I don't know if it ever aired in America, but like I said, like I had seen online and people have remembered it in Australia. But yeah, this is like kind of like I know for me when I was growing up, it was like the Great Space Coaster. That was one that was like the weird with the elephant guy and the speed reader and all, it was just like this random stuff. And like you would tell people later on, you know, before, you know, the internet days or whatever, and they would look at you like somebody spiked your Cocoa Puffs or something. Like, did you watch that? And what are you talking about? No, we were watching Smurfs like everybody else.
Yes. Now, is that the one with Gary Gnu? No Gnu's is good Gnu's.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah, so I didn't really remember. My wife did, and she was like, "Do you remember Gary Gnu? No Gnu's is good Gnu's," and she played it for me, and I was like, "That looks familiar." And so I think it was something that aired on weekends where I grew up. Like it was like I think it was one of those things that was like, you know, again like this. There's like this Saturday and Sunday morning block where it was like these stations they just needed to fill programming time before they got to like the Saturday morning cartoon blocks. And so they would just show all kinds of stuff. I mean, one of the crazy ones I remember locally was this painter. It was like a Bob Ross concept, but he was like this old sailor that lived in like this like trailer or something down by the water in like I don't know, like Marblehead or you know something, you know, in Massachusetts. And it would air on like the Boston channels. It would be on at like 5:30ish in the morning. So it's like those times when I would just be up that early you'd get that kind of kooky programming. 'Cause like HR Puffin stuff, and Sid and Marty Krofft, that kind of stuff. Like I would have no idea about that if I wasn't ever up at 5:30 in the morning, because it was never aired, at regular times. But the Great Space Coaster, I think, was like maybe a little bit later in the day, but I was like one of those ones that I kind of remembered being on. But you're right, it's like when you try to explain these things to people that didn't see them, like a singing flute in a Sid and Marty Krofft thing, and HR Puff and stuff. It's like, if they see a GIF of it, right? They see the GIF of like the flute running around, and they're like, what is that? What is going on there? And you're like, you don't know Sid and Marty Krofft, you don't know HR Puff and stuff. And it's like, if they don't know it, it's almost impossible to sort of introduce them to it.
Right. And you made a good point with like kind of, back in our day, the local markets usually had their own programming for kids. Like they would have like Romper Room, or DC, it was like Captain 20. Like they would do these just kind of whatever that market was. It was whoever wasn't in the newsroom that day put on a kooky clown costume and ran around and did like this kind of bozo ripoff kind of thing, or whatever that specific market did, and then they would fill time with cartoons and stuff. So a lot of those kind of shows, I don't think a lot of them survived, because they were just kind of like just honestly done to fill, as time fillers, before like Pink Panther or whatever the syndicated stuff came on.
Yeah, that's a great point, because what was remember I can't think of I was going to say Shakes the Clown, but Shakes the Clown was the Bobcat Goldthwait movie. But there's the clown, the Mary Tyler Moore episode, which has like the funniest, probably the funniest scene ever, right? Is the clown funeral, where Mary Tyler Moore loses it, during that. And it's like, it is a fascinating thing that like we're at a time now where it almost doesn't make sense to people that people that are younger. It's gonna, as we get older, it's gonna make less and less sense to people like why that episode is funny. Yes, it's funny that she's losing it at this funeral, but like they'd be like, well, why would a clown be on TV like that? Like that doesn't make any sense. And it's like you had like Bozo, you had all these different like you said, all these like local programming things. I mean, we were talking about it last time you were on. We were talking about MST3K, how that was a local show on TV in Minneapolis, and so but you're right, like that whole thing with the
it's
oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, it's whereas like we're in this part of the culture now where everybody just gets on YouTube and they just, or streaming, and it's the same thing,
right,
across the board. Whereas that was always kind of a cool thing too. Like when I would go, on vacation with my folks when I was a kid, seeing what TV was like in other cities and stuff, and seeing what the news looked like, and seeing what they, what I mean? There was like this vibe where it's like, or like even like the bumpers for like the 8 o'clock movie or whatever, because it was all regional and it was all different, and like nobody, nowadays would even think about that experience, because like you just turn on Netflix and it's boom, and then that's it.
Yeah, well, especially like like when I moved down here to Philadelphia from New England, you get used to like the local news, and at that time, this was like 2014, 2015, local news was still a concept that we would adhere to when it came to things like storms. So it's like so even at that time, we were still watching the news to find out about a big storm that was coming. Even that nowadays, you wouldn't do that. You'd be looking on your phone and the Weather Channel app to see like when the storm is coming and all those kinds of things. And I guess in your case, maybe with your daughter being in school, you probably would care about that, right? You'd probably want to see the crawl to see if school gets canceled. But otherwise, there's no need. Like local news, like you said, like if you're traveling to another city. And also, not only that, but if you're in a hotel, unless you're doing like an Airbnb, if you're in a hotel, you're going to get like this direct TV concept, or this like version of direct TV that's strictly for the hotel, that has no local channels. Usually it's just all, national versions of things. So you're right. Like you can't even experience that. That was always like the exciting thing. It was like, oh, if I visit my grandparents in Florida, I can watch the news out of like West Palm Beach or something like that. And it was like, hours away from where they lived, or even down here in Philadelphia where they talk about counties all the time. Whereas in Maine, and in Massachusetts, you never talk about county. Like in Massachusetts, they don't even care about counties. So they're not like, oh, this happened in Essex County. It's like, no, this happened in this town or that town. Whereas here it's like, oh, it's Bucks County or Delaware County or something like that. It's and so it's almost like you said, like when you go to new places now, you don't even get that flavor to the same extent that you did back then.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of fascinating in a way that it's just like I said, it was just like everybody's just used to like kind of like thumbnails on their phone or on their Roku. Whereas guys like you and I like remember like just thumbing through all the channels and like just having like a new channel onto the dial was like you would spend all day watching that channel because lots of times they wouldn't even have it on the guide yet, and you would just like, oh my god, I have to see what every because some every show and it's kind of weird to even kind of conceptualize now because it was like it was like the sense of discovery, and the only thing I can really like relate it to that was like just like Tubi, which is what Rare Blue Apes is on. That's really the only streamer where I feel like a sense of discovery just going through and like browsing the thumbnails.
Yeah, well, because to your point about that, the movies that you find on there, like Hulu and Netflix, especially like Hulu, because Hulu exists in this space in between Netflix and Tubi, I think, where Hulu has direct-to-video movies, but they almost sort of gather up ones that have slightly higher budgets or have slightly bigger names in them. Whereas, like you said, Tubi, you can find all kinds of things that that as you start kind of scrolling and get deeper into certain genres, you find stuff that low budget stuff, even more modern low budget stuff that you wouldn't have expected. That you're not going to see it on Hulu, you're not going to see it on Netflix. I guess you did. I was gonna say I don't even think you saw it on Netflix in the early days. It's the kind of stuff that's like zero budget kind of stuff where people are just putting together a movie and they're throwing it on Tubi. And it would be interesting to see because nobody's really doing anything like Rare Blue Apes of Cannibal Isle. But that's the other thing too, I guess, right? Is that when you get deep on some of those genres, you get stuff from the 50s and 60s too. You get biker films, you get old sci-fi movies. I think I found Catwoman on the Moon on Tubi, just kind of scrolling like that. Old westerns and things like that. So you're right, like Tubi's kind of the one where it's like the scrolling is almost the same as like having like the remote and just moving up and down the channels.
Yeah, and I just remember those days of like the Wild West of cable where even like somebody rerunning Lassie was like, oh wow, like somebody's like showing Lassie, and you would watch it because it's like if they're showing Lassie, what else are they showing? And it was because like you can only watch the same Silver Spoons rerun so many times or whatever they were playing, and or just knowing that just like shows like Small Wonder, just like which kind of feels like kind of like Rare Apes adjacent because it's just like one of the most bizarre concepts ever, and you're like, how did this even get past the planning stage? And you would see stuff like that, and then that's the only thing I can equate to like stumbling over Rare Blue Apes nowadays, like on Tubi.
Well, because how would you explain to a younger person Small Wonder, right? That there's a sitcom about a guy who designs a girl that's a robot, but she's not only is she their daughter, but she's their maid. I mean, that's like kind of like something out of like Cinderella, right? That's like wicked stepsister kind of stuff. But no, this is supposed to be like some kind of loving family where it's supposed to be a nice thing. And then this daughter, who is also also their maid, she malfunctions. She also has super strength, right? So she can like throw people around and everything. I mean, where they came up with that idea and said, "Hey, this is what we're going to do." I mean, from a feminist standpoint, right? I'm sure that's probably like case number one of like like how bad those kinds of things could get. That right, the son could just be his own person and just kind of go around and do all this kind of stuff, while the daughter is a robot who cleans the house. It's just a crazy concept.
And also, like when they tried to do one of those very special episodes, it is just so horrifying. Like when they find the kid on the milk cart, like the neighbor, the new
Yes.
neighbors, the kid on the milk carton, and it's even just like a bad taste version of one of those very special episodes. But that also feels like what Rare Blue Apes is doing. It's like kind of like it has these themes that you would see in children's programming. It just doesn't know the right way about it, but they just throw it in there because that's what you would expect. But it just kind of it just adds to the overall bizarreness because uh, when you have all this other stuff going on, when you try to slip this wholesomeness into it, it just makes it like that much more suspect.
Right, exactly. Well, because the pieces that they try to do in this in Rare Blue Apes, right, like that would be I guess very special episode ish or adjacent would be like the character who's mute. So the main character, the kid is mute, and there's this like the older brother who bullies him a little bit, and that's almost like another thing too, where the movie's like yeah, the older brother's going to bully him, but we're not going to let him bully him too much. It's just more like a concept that he bullies him as opposed to actually doing it, which in a way, that kind of feels more like a modern thing, right? Where they'd let you off easy with that. Because, there's so many movies when they do bullying. And, I remember growing up when you'd see bullies in movies, the William Zabka types that, I mean, look at what happens to poor, Ralph Macchio in The Karate Kid. I mean, he just gets tortured by those guys. But it's like you said, they're kind of adjacent on the very special episode, and I guess like running away would also be part of the very special episode, right? That but what would happen is they'd encounter like horrible people out there, and maybe like some nice person would help them, maybe like like someone like a Robert Guillaume who's like guest starring as a hobo in that episode, right? Who protects the kid. But yeah, and it's like the very special episode turns into people in crocodile suits and people in blue ape suits.
It's just like I said, it's just like one of those things where I'm like jealous of those people that I read about on online that have like these vague memories of this movie, like, and it's like gosh, and did you ever see that one with the crocodiles and the blue apes, and people just looking at them like no, like no, like it's just like when you really see it, and it just kind of like exceeds your expectations, and just a jaw-dropping movie. I mean you have stuff like like Mac and Me, where they again where they try to do that very special episode kind of stuff, and it turns out horribly wrong, like when the kid gets shot at the end. And it's like, oh, like you guys went too far with that. Like I think you traumatized some audience members.
Right, exactly. Well, because the blue ape part, and the blue apes and the crocodiles, it has the Sid and Marty Krofft feel. It also, I was thinking Banana Splits, which was Hanna-Barbera's foray into the Sid and Marty Krofft thing, and I mean just bananas, just Hanna-Barbera in general. It's Hanna-Barbera is a concept that doesn't exist anymore, where you had these two guys that were making cartoons where they were just like throwing stuff together and just saying, hey, that's what we're going to do for this episode. And episodes didn't carry on. They didn't, one thing didn't matter to another, but it was almost kind of like, what's the craziest stuff we can throw together? I remember I was watching Josie and the Pussycats recently because I was just really, I wanted to check it out. I was, the old, not the movie, but the old cartoon. And in the first episode, there's Captain Nemo from the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. They get captured by Captain Nemo, and they all get put in these like pods that sends them to the bottom of the ocean. But the cat, Sebastian, because he's so cute, he gets out of that. Right, the Captain Nemo doesn't want to do that to him. So now Sebastian has to go rescue them. So what Sebastian does is there's two fish bowls side by side, and they each have one goldfish in them. He consolidates them into one fish bowl, and then he puts the fish bowl on his head and swims down to the bottom of the ocean with his fishbowl on his head to free everybody. I think he tied the key to the pods to his tail, so he'd have them on his tail. And that's just what Hanna-Barbera. That's like the first episode of Josie and the Pussycats. That's what they're doing there, and I think for us, growing up with the brains that are kind of velocitized, I would say, to this kind of thing, right? That we're used to zaniness. A rare Blue Apes of Cannibal Isle takes it to another level than even like that, Sebastian rescuing the crew on Josie and the Pussycats would do.
Yeah, and it does feel very Hanna-Barbera's. Like I can see, what a 70s animated version of Oompa and the Swampies would look like. And Nani would be like the obligatory human and all the wackiness. And I think it's like we were saying, it's very much of that ilk. I think that might have been the blueprint they were following, but at some point they blaze their own trail instead of following in somebody else's footsteps. And it's in those moments that Rare Blue Apes just becomes just kind of like this, just it's an experience. You just don't watch it, like you experience this movie. And I've seen it multiple times, and it just keeps giving. It's like one of those, like and it's like, yes, this is just as ridiculous and as wonderful as I remember it.
Exactly. Well, because the movie's only 80 minutes long, and I think Nani runs away in like the first 5 or 6 minutes. It's something like that. Or maybe the first 10 minutes. I think because the movie starts with this wacky, like everybody's trying to chase the duck. So you get a little animal abuse to start with, right? This poor duck's getting, people are chasing the duck with brooms and everything. And again, there's no fake ducks or anything like that here. This is a real duck it's for, and I guess from the duck standpoint, it's probably better than being in one of those poultry markets that they they have in Asia, where it's just sitting in a cage waiting for someone to buy it, and it gets slaughtered and turned into Peking duck. Which the mom does make a reference to Peking duck, right? She's almost like, I want you to be hanging. Which you walk through Chinatown, you see those poor ducks, in the window there. But I would say, like, the thing that makes the most sense about the movie is the fact that Nani wants to run away rather than give away his duck. And I would say too that parents in the 70s telling a kid, yeah, we're just going to give your duck away, right? Like, I'm just going to bring your duck to a farm and that's it, you lose your pet. Like, as if it's not a big deal for poor Nani. That's the part that makes the most sense. That he's going to get on a boat and run away. And then from there, like you said, it blazes its own trail. It's almost like it has these concepts of Sid and Marty Krofft and and kids movies and Hanna-Barbera and all of these things. It has these ideas of how these things are supposed to work, but and when you watch it, you can see some connective tissue that's kids movie kind of connective tissue, but then it's just like it blazes its own trail. It's probably the best way to describe it.
Yeah, and then it's just the scene that always it doesn't fail to make me flinch is at the very end when Nani comes running up the walk, and it's like this supposed to be this like really kind of like emotional reunion with his sister, and at the last second he kind of puts Mr. Quack Quack on the ground.
Yes.
And then it's like the girl doesn't stop running, and then like they cut just right when like I think she squashed Mr. Quack there, and it's like oh my, and like we like me and my daughter both like jump every time we see it because we were like, oh, like, and it's one of those things, like there were no stunt ducks, and they may have had Peking duck as the rap party meal.
Right. Yeah, I mean, when you think about nowadays, right? Like, the fact that like every movie you watch nowadays, at the end it says no animals were harmed in the making of this picture. There's a reason for that. There's a reason why we needed that, and a movie like The Rare Blue Apes of Cannibal Isle is definitely a reason for that. Or why, for me, I feel like just have animals be CGI. Or like I was reading about Babe. It's 30 years old now, and how they used like a mix of animatronics, and then they found ways to make the skin on Babe and the other animals look more realistic. But they felt like with the dogs, for example, that they couldn't make them look realistic enough, so they had to do wide shots and all those kinds of things. You appreciate that when you see poor Mr. Quack Quack going through the ringer in this film.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, throughout all of that, like, he is an endearing character. I mean, like, like the scene where he just is like callously like thrown over the waterfall. You're like, oh my god! And then there's this big musical number, you, me, and the Papa, where Nani and the Blue Ape, and they're dancing and singing. And then right at the end, right at the crescendo, Mr. Quack Quack comes swooping in, and I swear to God, I'm not lying. It's right up there with ET coming back to life, because you're like, yes, Mr. Quack Quack lives, and that just makes that scene where he accidentally gets trampled on at the end even much more horrifying. If I'm to be honest.
Exactly. Well, because there's a very because what happens is the crocodiles are chasing them in their own boat, and the blue ape character, he decides, let's use your boat as a ruse to get them to fall down the waterfall. And Mr. Quack Quack is swimming along with the boat, and Nani's like, "Oh no, Mr. Quack Quack, what's going on?" And the ape's like, "Oh, he's giving his life for you. He's sacrificing himself for you." It's like, wait a second, we're only like, because at this point you're only about 20 to 30 minutes into the movie at this point, and it's like, oh, he went out of all this way to save Mr. Quack Quack, and now Mr. Quack Quack's going to die. But you're right, like, he gets over the fact that Mr. Quack Quack sacrificed himself really quickly. And again, the blue ape is very matter of fact about this. It's not like, oh, your poor Mr. Quack Quack that you went out, you ran away from home to protect, and he's your great companion and all this. It's like, yeah, it's almost kind of like when you watch a movie like Single White Female or something like that, right? Where she's like, like isolating, Jennifer Jason Leigh's isolating Bridget Fonda. It's almost like a similar thing with the blue ape here. It's like, nah, you don't need Mr. Quack Quack. I'm your friend. I'm your friend now. It's like, no. And then Mr. Quack, like you said, Mr. Quack Quack comes back, and like the thing is too is like there's moments where I think he's actually quacking himself, and then there's moments where they're ADRing in the quacking as well, which is just hilarious that he's just sort of almost like talking throughout the film.
Yeah, they'll give him a little close up, and it's just like quack quack, and it's like the mixture of the canned-ness of it all just makes him like a very endearing character, and the fact that a lot of times he's got to be scooped up or like ran around with, or like I think one point he gets like, he walks him like a dog, like he like ties him to the pier or whatever, and he's like, it's just like any excuse to get Mr. Quack Quack in there, I think is just a case of good cinema.
Right. I mean, there is a point where I think they did use a dummy, like it looks like they used like kind of like a white package that's supposed to, I think, be Quack Quack sitting on his back, and he's running around. So like at least that point they doubled him for him. But I mean, there is that scene when they go when they're in the cave, and they lose each other for a second because the cave is kind of magical or something, where Mr. Quack Quack is standing on his shoulders, on Nani's shoulders. And then the blue ape is like, oh, there you are. And he like kind of like startles Nani. And Nani like moves like suddenly, and poor Mr. Quack Quack falls over and fortunately like lands on his feet, But it's like, poor Mr. Quack Quack. Yeah, he kind of gets it in this film.
Yeah, I mean he's right up there with like Jackie Chan and Johnny Knoxville, of like just kind of putting their lives on the line to make great entertainment.
Now, I mean, one of the ones we got to talk about is the what would we call it? He's like an old pirate who's like living in the cave. So when they get into the cave, and again, the whole thing is that in this cave is supposed to be this schmug stuff, and the crocodiles are looking for the schmug stuff, and so when they're trying to make their way back to the blue ape and Nani are trying to make their way back to the blue ape's family, they go into this cave because they're planning to kind of go out the other side, and they encounter this like hermit character who's just like big scraggly hair. You almost think he's like a bad guy, but then you realize he's not, that he's actually nice, and he helps them escape. It's another one of those things that it feels like these kids movies feel like they have to have a character like this in them, and it's another one of those kind of trips where, like you said, like they're blazing their own path.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like he just reminds me that he just kind of has that like hermit look to him, and I know he's like an old pirate. I think he was on there on the island for like 20 years, and he's been kind of like hoarding the schmug from the swampies, and then he makes like that little trap. So he was it Bobo? I forgot what the other Swampy was, but they both get kind of called up in the schmug, and so Mr. Quack Quack and company gets free. So yeah, like you said, it just like if this was like a an American production, would have got like Roddy McDowell or somebody for just like for a day's work or somebody to just to get in there for name value. But since they made it in a desolate part of Malaysia, it's just some guy.
Right, exactly. Well, and the Roddy McDowell factor would be the thing that would like get people to connect to it because again, that would be a name that if you're going through Roddy McDowell's like extensive IMDb bio and you see this rare blue apes of Cannibal Isle, you're like, what is this? And then you click on it and it's like, oh, that's what this is. And of course, it would be an instant cult classic. And that's to your point. Like I think somehow Vinegar Syndrome stumbled upon this. I mean, I don't know if maybe they found someone like Don Greer and they were going through his work on IMDb and they were like, what is this movie? Or maybe they were doing, motorcycle films and they saw that, the Archimbalds, who knows? Because those are the only names I can think of that are they've at least done things that like a Vinegar Syndrome or somebody like that could pick up.
Right. Yeah. And I think Alice in Acid Land, and I think
Yes.
shot on location. I think I know Alice in Acid Land came out from Something Weird, and I know I think After Hours Seduction Cinema put out shot on location at one point. I think it's had several releases because I think it's public domain. But yeah, he's definitely, and apparently according to IMDb, he's the brother of Jane Greer from Out of the Past. Uh, so apparently he had at least an in somewhere in the Hollywood system. He's like one of those directors where I don't think, I mean, there is some trippy stuff in Alice, but you really can't really connect the dots where this movie is and the rest of his filmography is. It's just its own thing, and it's just so much better for it, I think.
Right, exactly. Well, right, because Alice in Acid Land, that's one of those scare movies. Trying to get scare you from doing acid, and yeah, it's kind of a trip because I guess it because I think it comes up before Go Ask Alice, the book. And I remember when I was in high school, we did the play, the Go Ask Alice play. So I was an extra or something in there. I can't remember. I think was I in fifth grade or sixth grade for that one? I can't remember. But anyway, so it's like this idea that this woman or this young college girl, like she's gets invited to a party that turns out was being held by a lesbian because lesbians were kind of evil back then. Or I should say lesbians weren't evil back then; they were depicted as evil back then. I should say that before I give the wrong idea. But
and like roughy sex, gritty sex movies of the 60s.
Yeah. And of course, not only is she a lesbian, she's a French lesbian, so she's got that European thing in her too that makes her equally dangerous. And I mean, it's like you said, it's a trip. I mean, it's not as famous as Reefer Madness or some of the others, but it's like you said, it's definitely a something weird kind of thing where like somebody like a Sven Gulli would get it, could do a night of a movie like that, or I guess I don't know if MST3K would have done a movie like that if it was a little bit because it is a little harsh. There's some rough stuff that happens in that movie. But 55 minutes is the perfect length for an MST3K movie. Throw in a Mr. B Natural short or something like that, and you're all set.
Yeah, and I'm hoping it as kind of hit and miss as the new seasons have been. I mean, I think Rare Blue Apes would be perfect MST fodder. I mean, I think they would have a lot of fun kind of recreating the costumes and maybe making Crow Mr. Quack Quack or it has a lot of potential, and I think that could boost its exposure level quite a bit too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the fact that it's on Vinegar Syndrome is a big one. And I think for people that find this on Vinegar Syndrome, if you're looking at Vinegar Syndrome things to purchase, it's definitely worth. I mean, obviously, the fact that it's on Tubi is a huge selling point. And I mean, the runtime is fascinating because again, it's only 80 minutes. Which I love an 80-minute movie because it's like 20 minutes in, I've only got an hour left. I think, which is just is a perfect length for a film. But it is interesting because when you're in like that first half hour, it's almost like, what else are they going to do for the next like 50 minutes
Yeah.
of this? And it is again one of those like kind of like kids movies where they're on this adventure where it's like they leave their house and it takes them forever to make it back home. This is kind of a weird one because it feels like every time the blue ape tells them that they're almost home, they've got to go through this other big thing. So he's like, oh, just over there, we should be at my grandparents. Oh, actually, we got to go down this big set of mountains here. Okay, so then we should be, oh, we got to go through the desert. Okay, so after the desert, we should be there. Well, we got to go through the cave. It's like eventually they finally get there. But that's really what it is it's like, it seems like they're almost home every 10 minutes and then they just find another reason to go there, which again, I don't know if that's the script. I don't even know if the original script had like 30 or 40 minutes worth of material and they just tacked stuff on to make it longer. I mean, again, they didn't need to create sets for any of this stuff. I mean, there's almost nothing in terms of sets. There's some things that are constructed like these totems that the crocodiles pray to or worship. There's some stuff like that, and then there's like the house that they sit in. It's like a Victorian house, which is probably just another room in the mansion that Nani lives in. So beyond that, they don't really have much for sets.
Yeah, and it's like you said, like they might have just stumbled upon like the desert location. So, well, we need a scene in the desert because the desert's here and it's free. We need a scene in the jungle because it's here and it's free. But it's almost like an Indiana Jones movie of just like kind of like these mini set pieces that kind of build into like the big battle, and the and also the scene and kind of to like what you were saying with the Hanna-Barbera aspect, the musical numbers do feel kind of very Josie and the Pussycats because it's just like it'll be a montage here, a montage there, and then at the end like they have like the big sing-along, and they do the title song, and it's one of those things where I think too that's like the only kind of like element really you can latch on to where it's like, oh, this feels like how a movie should be. Like we should have this big musical number at the end, whereas everything else is just kind of kind of like almost like a pod people version of what an alien thinks a movie should be like.
Right, exactly. I mean, the musical numbers I think make the most sense. Like where, like for example, the stew is cooking, and the big, the captain is out there, and he's doing like almost like this like Lou Reed talking song. But it was kind of common in like those musicals to have the villain do kind of like a half talk, half singing kind of thing, right? Where he would gotta, walk around and do whatever his song was. So like even that kind of stuff, it's like it's almost like Don Greer understood certain concepts of movies that he was going to put in this film and then just sort of let the rest of it take care of itself, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's it's like I said, that's just what makes it fascinating to watch over and over again because like and like you said, it's so episodic. Like when I was watching, I was like, oh wait, I remember this part kind of happening before this part, but then it all clicked again because it's just like this uh, grab bag of ideas and scenes that eventually kind of like culminate into like this big battle. But at the same time, it's just like it's definitely like one of those movies. Like if you put on at like 11 or 12 and there's certain substances available, like I mean you're gonna have your brain fried by this one.
Yeah, I mean, I would think like if now granted here in Philadelphia or Pennsylvania, weed is not legal, but over in New Jersey, it is. I think every state that borders Pennsylvania, it's legal. I think Maryland, it's right. It's legal in Maryland, recreational. Yeah. Ohio of all states, like when Ohio does something before, and I think even West Virginia, because that one also bordered. Maybe that might be another one that maybe doesn't, but I think it does. I think I looked at it. I think it's all the states, New York, that border Pennsylvania, have it. But my wife and I sometimes I'd go to New Jersey, the nearest dispensary there, and get a thing of gummies, because Philadelphia, even though it's not legal to buy it here, it's decriminalized. So if they caught me with a thing of gummies, they wouldn't say anything. But anyway, I remember trying one time, just a straight up gummy, and it was weed on a level that I wasn't used to. It was like a whole nother, I was definitely tripping. I was like, one of those things where like the weed kind of goes like you kind of spiraling into like reality and then kind of coming back to reality. I don't know. I cannot imagine how I would have felt watching this movie on one of those gummies. Yeah, it would have been a trip.
Yeah, I mean, it pretty much does the tripping for you. I mean, to be completely honest, but it's just, I mean, and the fact that it's Cannibal Isle, but I was trying to think about that this viewing, like they don't, there's no like traditional cannibals in it, and like when they make their stew, I guess the crocodiles put snakes and stuff in there, but I guess that's reptiles. Is that enough for cannibalism? But they're not eating other uh crocodiles, and like you know what I mean. There was like I was like, so why is this called Cannibal again? And it's like one of those movies where they, oh, it sounds cool, we'll just make it Cannibal Isle.
Right, because normally it would be other humans that are on the island and they're eating humans, right? So it's like 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 the adventurer in the '50s movie gets captured, and you got like women in these like skimpy leopard print bikini kind of outfits, right? That and then like the people with Italians that are supposed to play the local native population with bones through their nose and all that stuff, all the kind of horrible tropes, right, that you that are considered like really bad and problematic nowadays, but at that time they thought was all the things you would need for that kind of thing. It's almost like they were trying to evoke that image, but the thing is you're evoking the image of that in a kids movie. And also, if the crocodiles eat people, they're not cannibals. They're just eating people. And so, yeah, it's almost like they didn't think that through. Or if somebody just, like you said, somebody just slapped the word cannibal on there because they wanted to evoke this image of like adventure and all of that. I guess for a kids movie.
Yeah, and if somebody like rented this expecting like Cannibal Apocalypse or something, or Cannibal Holocaust, they're like, oh wow, let's watch this cannibal movie, and then it's like, this isn't Emmanuel and the Last Cannibals. This is something different.
Well, yeah, I mean, can you imagine like this doing a double feature of this and Cannibal Holocaust, right? Where I mean. Because again, the closest thing we've gotten, or was it, I was thinking of not Cannibal Holocaust, though Cannibal Holocaust would be kind of a trippy, because the movies are only 5 years apart. Actually, that was from 1980. I was thinking, what was the one? The Mad World of it's a wave film.
The Mad Doctor of Blood Island.
That's right. That's what it was. Yes.
Female mercenaries on Zombie Island.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Where it's sort of like a post-apocalypse thing. Yeah, that one's on Tubi, actually, I believe. That would be I mean, thinking of the Tubi double features you could pair this thing with. There's a lot of stuff on Tubi. I mean, Space Mutiny's on Tubi. This would be an interesting one to pair with Space Mutiny. I think there's some of those older Planet of the Apes movies, I think, are on Tubi as well. Some of the kind of like Time of the Apes or whatever, like those kinds of ones I think are on there. I mean, plenty of good 50s sci-fi on Tubi. I mean, at 80 minutes too, this is like a perfect thing to, I mean, it's perfect to kind of center your bad movie night around as well. And I think from a kid's standpoint, because a lot of our people that contribute, they've got kids probably around the same age as your daughter. They've got sort of like early teens or kind of like middle school age kids, because I think that's kind of the perfect age for this. The perfect age group for this is that like middle school and up. I almost feel like elementary is probably a little bit too young for this because it's a little bit out there and they might get nightmares. But I think like middle school and up, this could definitely be kind of a fun movie night that you could do with the family.
Yeah, and this definitely isn't for shall we say, like beginners of like bad movie lovers, because I think you have to kind of have like your big toe kind of in the bad movie pool, this is kind of like the video games, like after you've beaten every level but you still have the like achievements to unlock. This would be like one of those achievements that like, okay, do you want to go for your bad movie badge? Check this out. And like I said, like there are movies like we kind of talked about already, like Mac and Me, Peanut Butter Solution. There's always like these kind of like just bonkers kids movies. And I think if you like saw those kind of oddities and you're like you wanted more, like this is kind of like the apex. No pun intended there with apex, but this is like the apex of like bad children's cinema, and I can't even call it bad. It's just bizarre children's cinema because I mean I love this movie so much because like I probably watched it 5 or 6 times already, and even like I said I was when I said when I had suggested this, I was like, I even told my daughter, I was like, Matt's either gonna love it or he's never gonna have me on here again. I said, there's gonna be no in between here.
Well, you're right. There is no in between. Like this is not a movie. And I think when I was looking at the reviews on Letterboxd, it seemed like it was either 4-star or 2-star. This is definitely not a 3-star movie for anybody. I mean, I'm certainly in the 4-star camp. I think it's one of those things like you said, you it's almost like a gamble, but it was like when I was watching it, I was just like, this is amazing. I have never seen anything so beautiful in my life. With it, when you start off with the duck with Mr. Quack Quack, and that's kind of like fun enough, but it's like how many times have we seen that kind of thing? You think of like all the low budget actioners that were made in like the Philippines and Malaysia and Indonesia and stuff like that, where you'd have like the settings like that, you'd have characters like that, and then maybe like somebody comes in with a machine gun and mows everybody down, and you're like, boy, that was harsh, and then it's like the hero has to go on a revenge campaign or something. So like at least to that point, it made sense. And even when Nani lands on the island, he's at the pier area. That's kind of making sense. And then suddenly you've got these Chuck E. Cheese crocodiles that are just kind of walking around with these pirate English accents, like you said, there was like a Keith Richards kind of parody kind of thing where they're all kind of moseying around talking about this stuff while this blue ape is in a bamboo cage. And there was a part of me that was also in, like kind of like into the action part of it. I was like, oh, what's going to happen to this poor blue ape? Because with a movie like this, you have no idea what they're going to do. So anything is really on the table. And so you're hoping that the poor blue ape doesn't have a bad outcome, but you really don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's like a sense of discovery with every frame of this movie, and it's just it would going back to what you're saying about kind of like these Malaysian action movies that we've kind of seen in the past. The palatial estate that Nani lives in, like we would see that in like made in Philippines, made in overseas action movies. That's where the drug dealer would live, or that's where the consulate scene would be, where the hero gets his badge taken away. But we don't see the dilapidated fishing village. We don't see the desolate desert. We don't see the crumbling rocks and the rushing rapids and stuff. That's and if you do, it's not in a kids movie, and it's just the fact that the whole movie exists is like just a miracle.
It is. It really is. It is one of those things where again, I always make this joke that like whoever invented the medium of moving pictures, this is not something like when they were conceiving of the things that people were going to do with this new medium, this new art form, the Rare Apes of Cannibal Isle probably was the furthest thing from their mind on what they could create. But it's also one of the beautiful things about this medium, and I think for us as fans of it, to be able to have something like this exist, it makes you feel like like movies. It's why we love movies so much, is that you can have something like this at the same time that 2 weeks ago we had Superman come out, or there's Casablanca, or whatever, Scenes from a Marriage. Rare Blue Apes. It exists in the same medium. It's the same art form as those movies.
And it's just like one, like for me, like I'm kind of jaded. I watch a lot of yes, I watch bad movies, but like I don't watch a bad movie thinking, oh, I hope it's bad. I hope I go into like recently I went through Neil Breen's entire filmography, and there was just like I was just enraptured because I was like, oh my God, this is as bad and as amazing as I would hope that it would be.
Right.
So to still have that sense of discovery after bad movie, and like I said, I can't call it a bad movie. It's a grade Z movie. It's a WTF movie. It's but it's like whenever I have people at work or whatever, they ask me if I whatever I watched, and like I would tell them something like that, or what's that? Oh, it's a Mitch movie, and they know. Okay, like only me. Like they say no more. I'm never going to watch this movie.
Right.
But just to see the reactions of people when you describe a movie like this, I mean, that's one of the simple joys in life to me.
Well, and that's a great book. 'Cause I was describing this one to my wife, and she was like, "I think I might actually like watching that. That sounds like a lot of fun." And I do think like sometimes the ideas of these, like you said, sometimes people hear the idea and they're just like, "I'm not going anywhere near that. Nope, forget it. That's all you, right? You can do that." And sometimes people are like, "Oh, that sounds like fun," and then they get in and they see the reality of it, right? And I guess that's probably maybe part of it, like why you may have been worried how I was going to react, because it's like the reality of a rare blue Apes of Cannibal Isle versus like the concept of it and the pictures. Because I was showing my wife the pictures and she thought they were hilarious, from on IMDb. But when you get into the reality of what this movie actually is, and you've got to sit there for 80 minutes and take all of this stuff in, yeah, that is like a whole different level. Like you said, this is probably maybe more of like an intermediate or advanced level bad movie for people who are into bad movies.
Yeah, you definitely want to be a black belt in
Yes.
bad movies before like I think she has a genuine interest in kind of quote unquote bad movies like Ed Wood, Tommy Wiseau, like Neil Breen, like I would say, um, uh, like Mystery Science Theater, even the great stuff like that, like I would say like Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, which was able to sneak in kind of really radical ideas under the guise of schlock.
Right.
Uh, like I think you really need to kind of see those classics first, because if you go in cold with this one, I think you first of all you have to know what's possible in a regular movie, and then to have all those expectations totally uh shattered when you see something like this, it helps. Like I wouldn't just spring this on anybody. I think they have to have their palate up to a certain level before they experience this.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, because like I was thinking some friends that I think would enjoy this. I meant to show them. I meant to point it out to them because they showed me on YouTube the You ever see the old cartoon movie for? I shouldn't say it's old. The cartoon movie of Titanic. I think it's on YouTube.
No,
So there is this not like crazy. I think it's like about like two mice that are on the Titanic. And I don't remember if they survive either. But it's completely bonkers. And so it's like when somebody says, "Oh, you should watch something like that." I think that's a situation. I'm trying to see if I could find it on IMDb, but it came out in the '90s. I think it came out after the original Titanic, and I don't know who made it necessarily. I know it was like a foreign production because it does have like some kind of crazy translations and things like that in it. But it is a total trip. Actually, it looks like it came out in 2000. It's it's an Italian production. It's a Titanic La Leggenda Continua. So I guess I don't know. So I believe it's on YouTube. And
the
it's
legend continues.
yes. So the main character is
Okay.
Cinderella. Cinderella meets her Prince Charming. I think is what they're saying. It's something out there. It's a complete trip. But I know if they're showing me something like that and saying, "Hey, Matt, you're going to get a kick out of this," I can show them Rare Blue Waves of Cannibal Island. They'll appreciate it.
Yeah, like I said, like weird children's movies are like a genre unto themselves. I think uh like like those really bad they're probably on Tubi, but like the really bad like Pixar knockoffs like Ratatouille, and it like you just see these things and you're like, wow, that like I'm a diehard jaded bad movie fan, but I don't know if I could go if I can go down that road.
Well, because so looking at the Titanic one, I just decided to kind of just as we're talking here, see like what they what other things there are. Did you know that there's a Finding Nemo ripoff called Finding Jesus that came out in 2020?
Yes,
You do know about that one?
yes.
Okay, it's on
Yeah,
Tubi.
well, my daughter went down that rabbit hole not too long ago, and like she was showing me these like really. There's one that we watched. Now we watch it every Christmas. It was Rhapsody Street Kids Believe in Santa, and it's like this really bad 2000s animation, and I think it was one of those things where the producer ran off with all the money. So but they have like Mark Hamill and Sherry Stoner are like in the voice cast, but it looks like the most rudimentary Sims animation with and like the grandma's voice got corrupted. The audio file got corrupted, so she just speaks gibberish and like there's that one is worth checking out too, and it's just it's one of those things like why does this even exist? Oh, Clint Howard is a voice of like an 8-year-old in it. That just tells you.
That sounds amazing too. It's just, yeah, it's such a trip. Like this whole like market. I mean, the other one I can think of is that I haven't seen yet, but is like the Cool Cat series that had like
Yes,
Cynthia
my
Rothrock.
daughter's into that one as well. Yeah,
So has she seen those with like Cynthia Rothrock and Don the Dragon Wilson and whatnot?
I, well, there's so many. I think
Right.
there's at least 3. So I think she watched 1 or 2, and then she was like, okay, I had to tap out after a certain point.
Right, because I'm trying to like my plan is to get through as much of Cynthia Rothrock and Don the Dragon Wilson's filmography as I can before I delve in. I guess I don't think Don the Dragon Wilson is in the Cool Cats. I think it's just Cynthia Rothrock. I think there's another one called Martial Arts Kid that has the two of them in it. I don't know if they're like judges in a martial arts tournament or they train the martial art or something like that. But I'm trying to get through as much of their like kind of more straight ahead actors before I get into these other movies of theirs. But I know Gary Daniels, he did 3 religious movies. I did review one of the religious ones, The Mark, which also has Eric Roberts in it and Craig Scheffler, or Sheffer, from Nightbreed. But I haven't done, he has 2 other ones that I have to do at some point. And it's just like, it's sort of like that next level from some of those names where it's like, I want to review them all on the site. But like what reviewing them all on the site means is something else entirely.
Right, and then like you mentioned Gary Daniels, like you get into like that weird area of like kung fu kids movies like Pocket Ninjas,
Yes, yeah.
and you get it, and it's there. It's just like a you know. I would say a rabbit hole, but it's more of a minefield when you start going down that road of like the really bad ninja movies that were riding the turtle coattail of the 90s.
Oh, I mean, Pocket Ninjas, because not only is that Gary Daniels, but you've got Robert Zadar doing comedic sequences, which is just, I mean, putting those concepts together. I mean, I don't know what they thought that was doing, but when you watch it, it is. I mean, and again, to your point, it's like it's another level below Rare Blue Apes of Cannibal Isle, right? That like it's like if you could see Robert Zadar doing comedic sequences, like physical comedy sequences, like he's like one of the Three Stooges or something, in a movie called Pocket Ninjas that also has Gary Daniels. If you can manage that, then Rare Blue Apes of Cannibal Isle, you're ready for Rare Blue Apes of Cannibal Isle.
Yeah, but then there's the whole thing too when you see like those like surf ninjas and 3 ninjas, like that they're riding a certain coattail, and Rare Blue Apes. Well, there may have been a kind of desire to kind of copy the Crofts. It's of itself just like this like beautiful jewel of just like a craziness, and it's just that's what makes it like I said, it really needs to be an achievement badge of of a movie watching experience, because like you said, like if you can't get past some of these other movies we're talking about, you're not I don't think you'll fully appreciate, or you'll watch it and you're like, oh, that was weird, and then like 5 years later, like, I gotta watch that again because like I'm still thinking about it.
Right, exactly. Now, one other thing I wanted to mention about this movie, going back to thinking of Cynthia Rothrock and Gary Daniels, when you were on a few years back when we talked about Santa's Summer House, right? There was the croquet, playing, where it went on forever, right? The croquet match, and one of the things in this movie is the palatial estate, when Nani returns home, he's running across the croquet field, but they spare us the croquet match. There is no croquet match. I mean, I don't know about you, but it could have gone either way with croquet, right? I mean, I'm surprised the Blue Apes didn't play croquet with each other.
Yeah, I mean, the opportunity was there, but I mean, I think the croquet set was there to as a status symbol.
Right.
I think I think it was there. Like, probably rarely got used. But like when you live on as on like this palatial estate in Malaysia, like when the hired help sees the croquet set, they're like, oh man, they come for money.
Right. Exactly. And I guess that's the same with Santa. Santa's summer house in Malibu, he would also have the money to be able to have his own croquet set. So I guess that makes sense. Which, I mean, again, talking about bonkers movies. The thing I remember when I did the social media for Santa's Summer House, I think I'd been talking with John Cross from After We've Done about having, at that time he didn't have the PM podcast yet, but talking about having him come on to do something. And he saw that the social media for that. He was like, "Thank God I didn't do that movie." It was like, oh. I mean,
sometimes you got to take a bullet. You know what I mean? You got to take a bullet for your fans out there, and you just write it out or discuss it on the podcast, and then it's up to them if they want to go forward.
Right, exactly. Well, the funny thing about Santa's Summer House is that again, because we usually do a Christmas movie, in December, and it was kind of like, okay, well, it's got Cynthia Rothrock, it's got Gary Daniels, it's got Daniel Bernhardt, like Robert Mitch, or with not
Chris
Robert
Mitchum.
Mitchum. Chris Mitchum, exactly, yeah. So it's like, okay, well, we might as well do this thing, and again, I think comparing Rare Blue Apes of Cannibal Isle to that movie had like a lot of dead points. It had a lot of, like, again, the croquet playing was kind of, some dead stuff. I mean, it's like, it's a bad movie in that sense. It's David Dakota just sort of slapping something together like, oh, hey, we've got this mansion in Malibu for 7 days, and we've got all of these action stars that don't have anything else going on. Why don't we just put them together and make a movie? Rare Blue Apes of Cannibal Isle is like a special something that is like, it's another notch above that in terms of, a bad movie, but there's also like a special something about it that just makes it so much more fun to watch.
Yeah, and if they ever did like an Ed Wood disaster artist kind of behind the scenes making of a dramatization of making another bad movie, I mean, I would love to see a movie about the making of this, because it would, like I said, it would be like a Werner Herzog movie, like, okay, now we're going down the rapid river in the funny animal costume, and you will fall down the waterfall.
Exactly. Well, I mean, again, Don Greer is still with us now. He just turned 100 last year, so I don't know how up to being interviewed he would be. But I mean, I mean, the fact that this was the last movie he ever did, he's got to have some stories, and I don't know who he would have told those stories to. I mean, again, I imagine people that were coming to talk to him about stuff probably wanted to know about the early days of porn more than they wanted to know about this movie, which is kind of too bad, right? Or like also those scare movies, the something weird movies. So they probably didn't even talk to him about this, which is kind of too bad, because there's probably this treasure trove of knowledge out there that's just sitting in his head that just needs to be unlocked, and just nobody's ever asked him about it before.
Yeah, I mean, like, and again, like the fact that it was virtually unseen for about 30, 40 years is like the story of just how that happened. It would be fascinating, though I can't imagine too many prints of it were struck, and if And there is, I think there is kind of like a throwback sense to like the 50s and 60s when they would show like those kiddie matinees. Uh, like they would show like Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, or, uh, you know, like, um, like the Herschel Gordon Lewis or Barry Mann, that like they would do those weird kids movies. I guess that's another kind of touch on, like, they did adult movies and then they also did these kids movies too. So I guess it's not that too far removed, but they kind of did those in tandem. But they would book like a theater and they would play cartoons. They would play like just kind of like a filler movie, like this. Like the kids would come in thinking that they're getting Wizard of Oz or something, and then it would be something like this. So I think that's kind of like maybe like one of those touchstones you could link it back to, but at the end of the day, it's just really its own thing.
It really is, and like you said, those people living in Australia who got to see this on TV when they were growing up, yeah, a lot of times I don't feel completely jealous about it because it's like, I grew up in my time, in my place, and I had my own experiences, and I can appreciate those as well. But I think that's one of the few where it's like, man, yeah, I don't know if I wanted to grow up, if I would want to grow up in Australia necessarily compared to where I grew up, but that experience is definitely something that I envy.
Yeah, just stumbling upon that. Even if you stumbled upon it halfway was for like 30 years, and then all of a sudden you're flipping through Tubi, you're like, this is that movie that I watched when I was 5 years old. I was sick home from school and I thought it was the Robitussin, but no, this movie is real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It would be such an aha moment.
Well, because that happened when I was a kid. I remember visiting a friend, and it was a Sunday afternoon, and we were looking for stuff to do. And his dad was like, "Oh, there's this movie Starship Invasion on," and he's like, "It's the worst movie of all time." And we're like, "Does it say that?" And it was like, "Well, it's only got 1 star, so it's got to be the worst movie of all time." And we watched this movie, and we were loving it. We were just making fun of it the whole time. We were getting a kick out of it. And then the movie kind of disappeared to me forever, or for a while. But I always remember this concept of the Starship Invasion. And I'm scrolling through Tubi and saw that the Riff Tracks guys did it, and I was like, "This is beautiful." And I think it's kind of the same thing, right? That like, you're seeing this rare blue apes of Cannibal Isle in the 80s in Australia. And like you said, you come in the middle of it, you don't know what this is. And years later, you probably wouldn't even know how to search for it. You'd say this movie, I guess nowadays, like search engines are a little bit better and some of them use AI even. But I mean, I remember when I saw Out for a Kill, I saw the very end of it on USA where he throws the samurai sword and beheads the guy. That's all I caught on USA. And it was at that point where we didn't have a TV guide at our house. And I had just missed, you know how with the guide bar on your cable box that when the hour changed, it removed what was there from the previous hour. So you couldn't go back and see what was on in the previous hours. So it had changed to whatever was on that I was turning on USA for to begin with. So I couldn't figure out the name. So I went through like 4 Seagal movies before I found it, that it was Out for a Kill. That's kind of what, the Rare Blue Apes, you wouldn't even have that option with Rare Blue Apes of Cannibal Isle. There was no, you just would have to be lucky enough to, like you said, to find it on Tubi.
Yeah, and I think it's one, for guys like us, of a certain age, it's good that we do have that now. But like back in the day, like, oh man, if there was something on Cinemax or something and it aired once at like 1:15 in the morning,
Right.
that was your time to watch it because you never knew if you were going to see that again. And especially like, with like the Joe Bob Briggs stuff, like he would play like kind of like the B-Rama or something, and then it would be this weird Bavarian sex comedy after that.
Yes.
And it would be like, what is it? Like there was no like, oh, I'll wait till it comes on again. I think that was the only time it might have aired because it might have been in a package of movies. Like, oh, you can have X amount of titles, but you have to show these 100 bad movie, and just air them once. So there's always that weird sense of discovery of just kind of like, especially like you said with getting the cable guide. Like I remember getting the cable guide and going through and like starring everything that I wanted to watch or tape, and like just like those little things, like I kind of miss that. I mean, I still kind of do that with my my watch list on Tubi or whatever, but it's not quite the same thing.
No, well, it's like, for my, I think it was my 1200th post, or maybe 13, one of my kind of milestone posts, I did uh Beach Fever, Kato Kalin romp movie. And I remember not long after the OJ trial that USA Up All Night screened it in their 3 hour block. Or sorry, the 3 a.m. block. So you remember, like, USA, I guess it was what, 11 p.m., 1 a.m., and then the 3 a.m. block was the last movie, where there really wasn't even a host for that 3 a.m. movie, right? It was just sort of like they just showed the movie. And I remember seeing in the TV guide, I was like, okay, Kato Kalin movie, 3 a.m., I got to tape this. The problem was that our VCR was old and crappy. And the thing with the VCR was, like, it only had like buttons for channels. And so you couldn't go all the way up the dial to cable box channels. So what you'd have to do is put it on channel 3 and then run the cable box through channel 3 through the VCR. So that meant you had to watch it while you were taping it. And so I set it up in the living room, our living room TV, for 3 in the morning, had everything ready to go. It was recording. I get up at 4:30 to see how things were going, and my dad was watching headline news. Remember that, when the headline news would be on, like, every half
Yep.
hour? Yeah. And so that was it. Beach Fever was gone. And so now, of course, it's on YouTube. I can watch it on YouTube whenever I want. But it was like years. I was like, how am I going to find this beat? I didn't even know it was called. I couldn't remember the name of it. I had to go on IMDb eventually when that came out, and was like, oh, it was Beach Fever. That's the movie. But because I didn't even know the name, I was just like, this Kato Kayla movie. I've got to tape this. But that was like this thing that was like, yeah, like this whole process that we had to go through. And granted, that process was partly because my parents had this really cheap VCR that was like, for the mid 90s, even then it was a bad VCR, but still, that was it. That movie was gone forever. And now it's like we've got all this stuff at our fingertips.
Yeah, I mean, we sound like, back in my day, we had to walk, 6 miles to school, and and 6 feet of snow back and forth. Yeah, but I mean, it really was. And I remember, if you wanted to watch like an Andy Sedaris movie, and the cable box was in the other room, you had to wait till the parents were asleep, and then you sneak in, and then you watch it on like the lowest volume setting you could without getting caught. And I remember I watched Hard Ticket to Hawaii that way, and I remember like kind of hearing somebody stirring, and like it's like, oh, I gotta like hurry this up, thinking the movie was almost over, and then the snake in the toilet scene happened, and I like let out this yelp, and I was like, oh god, I thought for sure I was caught, and then I was like, oh no, okay, and then I just kind of turned it off. But I just, whenever I think of that movie, I think of like that, going to turn it off, and then the snake pops up, like, whoa.
Right, because I mean, that's where Sedaris was making his money, was on HBO and Cinemax and those things. And so,
Yes.
but that was the thing with those channels back then, was that, like, you had to have the cable box to be able to watch them. Like, you could hook the cable coaxial, like the cable directly into the TV for the non-pay channels, so you could get your, USA Network and those kind of things. But the cable box was where all the pay channels were. So, like you said, like, unless you got multiple boxes, which, nobody's parents want to do that, because that was extra money. It's like, because I remember one of the things was like extend, like doing the splitters, and we'd have like wires running all over the house, to be able to extend the cable to different rooms. But yeah, it's like, something like a Sedaris movie is like, yeah, you had to watch that quietly. The other one, I think it was John Cross was talking about, like, with the Van Damme movies, where like you'd watch one of those, and your parents would come in right at the scene where he was like, naked, or in these like steamy sex scenes that he did. And it's like, your parents are like, like you went through all this trouble to watch like the erotic thriller, right? And like be like, all stealth about it, and your parents don't know you're watching the erotic thriller, and you've got that going. But it's the Van Damme movie that your parents are like, what are you watching? It's like, it's Death Warrant or whatever, it's just the conjugal visit scene. Sorry, mom. It's like,
They always had that sixth sense. And like,
yes.
now that I am a parent, like, it's not sixth sense. You just wait until you hear that steamy sax solo.
Right. Yes.
And then you have to like knock on them, like, hey, what are you watching in there? It's nothing, Dad, I swear.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I remember the big one was always Terminator, because you're
Mhm.
watching Terminator. Parents don't come in, during the explosions and actions. They come in during the love scene with Linda Hamilton, and she's naked for what, 6 seconds? And it's that 6 seconds. That's when they stick their nose in the door.
Exactly. And it's like, the erotic thrillers, you're always so careful with those, right? Like you said, you had the sound down for those. You made sure, you had like a whole setup in place where you could switch it off to, like I don't know if you had for the Atari the thing on the back of the TV that you could switch,
Oh
Um,
yeah, we had that. Yep.
yeah, so that was one thing you could do is you could switch it to regular TV from the things like that. All these different techniques that you could do, but you wouldn't think about it for the Van Damme or like Terminator or something like that. And that's the one that what are you watching in there? It's like okay, all right, sorry, mom. Yeah, I didn't let you rent that, did I? And it's like, yes, here's the like well, actually, you couldn't show them the cover, right? Because you were getting a plastic,
Right.
a see-through plastic clamshell that the movie was in.
Mhm.
Actually, the cover was sitting on the case there to show somebody else that it was already taken out. So I guess I couldn't show them the cover and say, yeah, no, you were sending me this robot, killer movie is what I rented.
And, oh my god! I mean, it's. I remember there was a time, and I'll remember this till the day I die. Uh, on Halloween, they had a Playboy free preview night.
Oh yeah,
And all my friends were over, and we were like flipping through the channels, just and like we see Playboy on, and there was like a time where like Playboy would start programming at like 8 o'clock, and like for like 8:01 to 8:02, you could kind of sometimes they would keep, there'd be a little delay so you could see like the logo and maybe like one or two boobs, but it was all, and I remember the whole night, all of my friends were in our Halloween costumes, and we got one hand on the door, the one hand on the turning the switch, and we didn't even have remotes like. And of course, my parents knew because they had cable in the other room. And they're like, why are all these 12, 13-year-old boys completely silent, huddled into a room? So they would knock on the door and we would flip it to Disney Channel or whatever was I think I think Playboy was 16 and Disney was 17. Who came up with that? I don't know. But, so we like you come in and we're watching Donald Duck. We're like, what are you doing? We're like, we're
because at that
watching
time,
TV.
I was gonna say because at that time the Disney Channel was a pay channel as well, so that's why they were near each other.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was like one of those things like I'll take to my grave. I was like, and like they knew, but they were just messing with us.
Mhm.
But it was so funny and like it wasn't like watching like porn on the internet.
Right.
It was very cheesecake stuff, and a lot of times it was a lot of filler. They would have like glamorous locations and limos and all this stuff, and then the girl would get into the hot tub for 45 seconds and then it would be off so it wasn't like we were watching anything crazy. It was just like, oh, boobs. And it was so it's to be young and in the 80s, I think you had to be there.
Right. Well, because one of the things a lot of the audience that listens, based on the demographics, they're around our age. We do get some that
Yeah.
are younger, but for the most part, they're our age. Though it is funny too, because also we get we have listeners who are a little bit older, and that's also funny too because they would have been in their teens when like for example like Cinemax was showing. We had Robert Culp showing classic movies in like 82, 83. So like the difference between what Cinemax was in 82, 83 versus what it became in like 88, 89, it's two totally different channels and a totally different experience that you're having.
Yeah, I mean, it went from, like you said, almost like Turner Movie Classics to HBO's kind of step sibling to like Skinamax. Like it kind of went through all these kind of iterations, and then kind of once the 2000s kind of kicked in, a lot more of the but see, like HBO had their stuff, but it was like the classy stuff, like Real Sex or Taxi Cab Confessions, like these like things that were pseudo documentary, but they were just giving you TNA in a different way.
Yeah, no, that's a great point too. Yeah, and then I remember when I graduated from college in '02, and I got my own apartment. I had had cable myself, and suddenly it was like, oh, there's on demand now, and so it's like, what was it, like Cinemax After Dark or something was like their on demand section where you could pick from like 10 or 11 movies, which so even as far back as 2000, like the game was already starting to change with that kind of thing.
Yeah, and then yeah, like I do remember like that, and that was almost kind of like a Wild West kind of situation when they first started doing on demand. It was late 90s, early 2000s, but it was stuff from like the 70s, like
Yeah.
Gas Pump Girls
Right.
or stuff. You know what I mean? It was stuff like, oh my god, like this is awesome.
Yeah.
And then flash forward to the next year, and it's like Sandra Bullock romantic comedies. So it's like it was kind of like, like I remember actually wrapping Christmas presents to Gas Pump Girls. Like
Right.
I was like, because I was like, oh man, Gas Pump Girls is on and it's free and I can watch it anytime
Yes.
I want. Because I remember just on demand stuff was like mind blowing. Like, oh
Yeah.
my god, like I don't have to wait around to watch Gas Pump Girls at 1:15. I can watch it while I'm wrapping Christmas presents.
Yeah, it is amazing, and it's amazing. I think for us at our age group to have seen the whole change happen. I mean, like thinking about like the whole situations going on with Stephen Colbert, where yes, there is some part of it is the fact that he was critical of Trump, and Trump's like, hey, if you want this merger to go through with whatever Skydance or whatever whatever the Oracle company is, you got to get rid of Colbert. But there's also this sense of like, is late night TV dead? And obviously, in the 80s, it was like Johnny Carson was kind of appointment viewing. I was like, you stay up at night and watch Johnny Carson. And it was like, if you got a new movie out, you got to be on Carson and all of that stuff. And now we're seeing a time where there's almost a sense of like, is it worth it to even have late night talk shows on NBC or CBS or any of those channels? And the same thing with movies, where we see the emergence of cable and the emergence of being able to watch things on cable that you couldn't watch before. At the same time, there's a video store, and then it moves into this on demand thing, and now it is this, everything is on demand, everything is streaming, and it gets us a movie like The Rare Blue Apes of Cannibal Isle that shouldn't really be available at all, but it is. It at our fingertips to be able to just like log into Tubi on any device, on a phone, on a computer, on your TV, and a tablet or whatever, and watch this movie that is just such a fascinating piece of cinema.
What a time to be alive.
It really is. It really is. Well, maybe that's a great place for us to leave it, Mitch. While we're wrapping up here, though, anything that you wanted to plug?
Yeah, just everybody come see me on uh I have my blog, the video vacuum at blogger.com. I'm on come and go on Twitter here and there, mostly just to promote the site, but I also have a Amazon author page. My latest book is the Kung Fu Companion, the Chopsaki movie guide, where I review a bunch of just kind of like a grab bag of all kind of kung fu, kickboxing, martial arts movies. And I'm currently working on another book that'll be just kind of like just like a random assortment of genres and stars that I'm going to be featuring. Hopefully, maybe by the end of the year that will be out. But yeah, but you can always find me there and drop me a line in the comments, and it's all the usual places. I'll be seeing you in all the usual places.
Exactly, yeah. And the links in the podcast description will have your site and also the link to your newest one, the Kung Fu Companion. That link for that the Amazon page will be in there as well, so people can check those out. I mean, again, talking about this world we live in now, where you've got Tubi, you've got all these options at your fingertips. You're in the mood for a kung fu or a martial arts movie. The thing I love about the Kung Fu Companion is it's really great for when you're deciding between a whole bunch of different movies. Sometimes like seeing that you've reviewed it and it's got a positive review, or even if it's got a negative review, but I'm just in the mood for something kind of crazy, but it might be the thing that elevates that choice amongst all the other choices there.
Yeah, and with like the Wu-Tang channel, that's a really good streamer. If you just like I think movies like that, they're that are on that channel, they're like for guys like you and I that have seen so much, and it's like, what else is out there? And because they have like the B, C, D level of kung fu movies on there. They have a lot of Godfrey Ho, just like a lot of like just kind of historical martial arts cinema that probably hadn't seen the light. Kind of like Rare Blue Apes, where like for a while kung fu movies of that era were kind of out of fashion, and now there is a market. There is at least a place for to have them all streaming, and people that like that sort of thing, like you and I, we can go and find it.
Yeah, that's always a great thing too. It's on YouTube. You know, you just go on YouTube, subscribe to a Wu-Tang channel, and they're always putting out new stuff. So yeah, that's always a great one as well. Well, well, thank you again, Mitch, for coming on. This was you could tell your daughter that yes, I loved it. So I love the Blue Apes of Cannibal Isle. And definitely we'll have you on again for sure. This was you gambled correctly. You knew correctly. But thank you again for coming on. This was a ton of fun.
Hey, bet high, win big.
Right, exactly for sure. And thank you everybody for listening. We'll be back soon. Who knows what we'll come back with next? But we will be back soon. But so thank you for listening, and see you later. Bye everyone.
Direct